Last year, Triumph massively updated their large-capacity adventure bike, the Tiger 1200, with more power, less weight, loads more tech, and a visual redesign too. And so it really was a ground-up overhaul that massively improved it. So much so that when I rode it back-to-back with what has to be the benchmark in this segment, the BMW R1300GS, I came away from it thinking I actually preferred the new Tiger 1200.
But look, it's now 2024 and BMW have also completely reworked their offering, and so now we've got the R1300GS, which is a massive leap forward from the 1250. But still, is it good enough to now beat the Tiger 1200? Well, today I'm going to head over to Fowler's in Bristol to ride them both back to back and find out.
So look, what's so good about this new GS, and does it now have a chance against the Tiger 1200? Well, I think yes, because there are massive improvements across the board, starting with the weight, which has been reduced really quite substantially. They're claiming 12 kilograms across the whole bike, with a wet weight now of 237 kilograms in stock form. And one of the things that Triumph were really proud of when they announced the big update to the Tiger 1200 last year was the fact that it was now lighter than the GS at 240 kilograms wet. So yeah, previously that was a big advantage to them, but in 2024 there's now not much to separate them, and in fact the GS actually edges it. The feeling out on the road with this new GS is noticeably different, not only with that lower weight and the way that makes it easier to maneuver around and stuff, but also they've made it feel more compact, and now it feels quite slender, and again that just helps it feel more manageable. The other headline figure, of course, that Triumph were putting a lot of emphasis on last year was the fact that the Tiger 1200 makes 148 horsepower peak, and so again that was a big advantage over the previous generation of this bike. But now, having gone from a 1250 up in capacity to a 1300, the GS is making 9 more horsepower, so it's now 145 horsepower peak, and so again very, very close now with the Tiger 1200. So look, yeah, I've been really enjoying this bike for the last couple of weeks, and I think this is going to be quite a close run thing now.
Now, before we get on the road with the Tiger, I just want to say a huge thanks to today's video sponsor, and that's Insta360. All of the riding footage today is shot with their latest and greatest action cam, and that's the new Ace Pro, which I've been using for the past couple of months. Now, not only do you get excellent image quality with a Leica designed lens, HDR video, and a big sensor, but also they've absolutely rammed it full of useful features like the flip-up screen, excellent nighttime footage owing to their AI chip, and voice control and gesture controls. Now, there's also a brilliant GPS-enabled remote that allows you to preview the footage on your camera so you always get the right shot. Plus, this camera can also pair with an Apple Watch or Garmin to act as the remote, as well as some Bluetooth headsets like the Cardo Packtalk Edge that I use to pipe audio straight from your helmet into the footage. Honestly, with all these features, I think it's safe to say it really does make it the ultimate action camera for motorcyclists. So do check out the link down in the description below to find out more, and also down there you'll find a code that gets you a free gift with every purchase. So once again, a massive thanks to Insta360 for their support, and with that, let's see what the Tiger feels like after hopping straight off this massively improved GS.
Now I immediately remember what I liked about this bike. You see, despite the fact that the GS is undoubtedly quicker than its predecessor, the Tiger 1200 just has this more aggressive feel, even in this more off-road biased Rally Pro spec. You see, for this generation they fitted the T-plane crank that was developed for the Tiger 900, and the general idea is that instead of a smooth, even triple cylinder feel, 2 of the cylinders fire closer together, 1 further apart, and that gives you some of the feel of a twin cylinder bike, which gives it more of a feel of guts in the bottom of the rev range. Now with most things there is a trade-off, and in this case it's nowhere near as smooth as the previous gen triple or the Boxer twin for that matter, but what it does have is that extra aggression and snarl and ferocity when you're on the throttle, which I think just makes it feel more exciting to ride. I'm noticing that the quick shifter is a bit better too. It's smoother, it's less clunky, and it seems to work better in the lower part of the rev range. And then also at the front you've got that traditional fork versus the telelever suspension that you'll find on the GS and some of the other BMWs, which I think just biases a touch more towards comfort. Even the brakes just feel that little bit sharper, despite the fact that they've upgraded the brakes on the GS with this new linked braking system. But with all that considered, the Tiger is just the bike that I'd want to be on when the pace picks up a bit.
Now for me, riding bikes properly immediately back to back like this is the best way to get a true idea of how they feel in relation to each other. So a huge thanks again to Fowlers of Bristol for lending me their Tiger 1200. Now it was exceptionally cold on this day though, and so instead of standing around outside freezing my nuts off, I decided to head back to the studio to review my scores from the 1250 GS video and see how much has changed.
So let's start with the engine, and I think I called this one even because I think ultimately it comes down to pretty much a question of personal taste. You see, the Tiger is much more like the other bikes in the large capacity adventure market, like the KTM 1290 Super Adventure or the Ducati Multistrada V4, in that they've got that raspiness, that aggression to them, and that sort of cross-plane soul that I think makes them a bit more entertaining. The Boxer, on the other hand, well, it's exceptional on torque, and also in terms of peak power, it's closer to the Tiger than ever, but I think the crucial difference really is that feel and sound, where this is much smoother and almost has like a droning sound. And while I don't find it quite so visceral, it has to be said, it is still a brilliant engine, especially for doing big miles, where that smoothness really comes into play and it pulls so well. And also, it's the best of the bunch in terms of fuel consumption because of their shift cam variable valve timing and lift system. So look, if that's a big part of the sort of riding that you like to do, then maybe consider this one. Whereas for me, personally, I think I'd probably take the T-plane of the Tiger, just for a bit more excitement off the motorway. But like I say, it's personal taste, and so this one again, I'll call it evens. Now handling I previously gave to the Tiger, and although the weight has come down on the GS to a very impressive level, when you are looking for the more sporty side of these bikes, the Tiger just gives you more feel from the front, handles more traditionally I guess with a more conventional suspension setup, and also little things like that extra bit of sharpness on the brakes. So I think again, I'll give this one to the Tiger. Now comfort went to the GS last time, but in my opinion it's got even better in that regard. So again, the point has to go here. It's still got that excellent ride quality that makes it so good, and there are loads of little areas that they've improved it. It's just got so many creature comforts, and like Triumph said, they ditched the electric windscreen on the Tiger 1200 to save weight, and yet BMW have managed to shed loads of weight and bring it in for the first time. Then you've got stuff like the heated grips. I'd say that only really tepid grips on the Tiger, whereas these, I was really impressed. They'll pretty much fry the palms of your hands through your gloves, especially if it's only like a moderately cold day. Then I was thinking about the adaptive ride height as well. It's automatic on this bike, and it drops you down from 850mm where the standard seat height is, down to 820 when you come to a standstill, and it just makes it feel way more reassuring to get your feet down. Now Triumph did issue like a software update for the Tiger 1200 after it launched, where you can now hold the home button on the right hand switchgear, and that minimizes the height of the rear shock, and so again it helps you to get your feet down when you're stopping, but you have to do it manually, which is of course far less convenient, and also it only happens on the rear shock, so the bike's sitting back a bit, whereas this does it on the front and rear, and so I guess it affects the geometry of the bike less. It'll handle more normally in its low setting. Then you've got that really nice luxurious cushy ride that you get from the telelever suspension, the smoothness of the engine, and so the GS is thoroughly deserving of the point. Now onto tech, and I think you would have expected the Tiger 1200 to be the best in this field, given that the 1250 hadn't been updated for a few years and the Tiger 1200 was brand new last year. And it certainly edged it. I like the usability of all the techie features, but also it had a radar on the rear and that gave it blind spot warnings, and there was nothing really comparable available yet for the 1250 GS. But now I think it's absolutely fair to say that this is one of the most advanced bikes you can currently buy on the market. And so the points got to go this side for many, many reasons. I mean, now you've got radars front and rear on this bike. So not only do you get the same blind spot warnings, but now active cruise control and front collision warnings. You've got the jack up feature on the adaptive ride height. So when you push the center stand down, it picks the bike up with the suspension to make it easier to get up onto the stand. They've really thought about how to make it easy to use as well. I really like this new rocker switch on the left-hand switchgear, which you can assign your favorite settings to so you can access them quickly. You've got fancy luggage, which is centrally lock-in and also has an internal light and charging socket. There's a stash for your phone in the tank, which also has a USB socket for charging. And then there are things like the emergency SOS button, which has been available on BMWs for quite some time, but isn't a feature that you can get on a Triumph. So I think it's fair to say that the GS is actually quite far ahead now in this field, although I should point out that a lot of those features are extra. They're part of the accessories catalog. Styling, I called it evens for these two. I don't think there's a great deal in it. There's stuff to be said that's good about this versus the Tiger. I really like the Option 719 Tramontana paint job, the gold rims. I've even quite grown to like this new headlight design. I think it looks quite smart once you get used to it. But the Tiger is maybe a little more rugged looking, more blocky I think, and a little bit less swooping at the front end. And also it seems bigger, which makes it look a little bit more impressive, which perhaps a large adventure bike should. But yeah, I wouldn't say either is massively better looking than the other. Like the engine, this comes down to personal taste, and so I'll call it evens, but do let me know your pick down in the comments. Price-wise, the GS has gone up. The base 1300 GS, for example, comes in at $15,990, whereas the Tiger 1200, the base GT model, comes in at about $1,000 less. Then if you start looking at speccing them up, well, the top spec Tiger 1200 Rally Explorer with the 30-litre tank and all the trimmings from the accessories catalogue, that comes in at about 19.5 grand. And while it is pretty difficult to spec them up exactly the same, things that are thrown in with that Rally Explorer, like the fog lights, are 390 quid for this bike. So it really does stack up quickly. And in the most comparable spec that I could get to in the configurator, you were looking at more like 21 grand. And for this particular bike that I've been riding, it's not far off 23. So look, if you really love a Boxer Twin, if you love the way the bike handles, if you're a massive GS fan, I think you could probably easily justify the difference, but you can't argue with the numbers. This is slightly more expensive, and so the point has to go to the Tiger.
But look, if that's all a bit numerical and simplistic for your taste, then here's what I felt after riding them. The Tiger's engine, sound, the quick shifter, the front end feel, the braking, all make it more fun to ride for me, and so that's the one I'd choose if I was out on a country road. If, however, I was sat on the motorway or touring, the electric windscreen, the hotter grips, the active cruise control, the telelever ride quality, the Boxer Twin smoothness, and the shift cam enabled fuel efficiency would easily make the GS the better choice. As always though, I'd love to know what you think of them, so do let me know down in the comments below which bike you choose. And if you want to see more detail on how the 1300 compares to the 1250 GS, then there's a side-by-side comparison I shot recently, which I'll leave on the screen now, so do give it a click and give it a watch if you haven't already. Hit subscribe as well if you haven't already to see more of the latest motorcycle reviews and comparisons like this right here on YouTube. Many thanks for watching today, and we'll see you in the next video.